We have now seen what sounds are, what we know when we know a sound, and how we can combine them to form larger units. But language is not just a system of sounds. To communicate thoughts, we have to be able to assign meaning to sound. We'll start by thinking about the unit that most everybody would be able to identify as a meaningful unit, namely the word. We'll define word as a combination of sound and meaning. It's actually not easy to count the words of a language, but in the second edition of the Oxford English Dictionary there are 171,476 full entries for words in use and another 40-some thousand obsolete ones. That's a huge amount of words. Of course, as a speaker of English, you won't know all of them. Some are so specialized that they're only used by a specific set of people, and some words are old and no one uses them anymore. But we don't have to worry that we are losing words. There are constantly words added to our language. Some make it into the dictionary, others don't. So let's think about why we would add words. Can't we just agree on the words that we already have? Well, let's go back a few hundred years. Suppose you're in this office, and then you find yourself here. First, you don't know what anything is. And then you can't even talk about all this stuff. You don't know how to name it. New things come into being and new concepts become relevant. For example, Facebook is so much part of our lives that we need a word to refer to it. When a new word is created, we talk about coinage. That's the term for the creation of new terms. But how do we do this? Who gets to decide on a new word? Well, we all do. We all make up words. Some survive, others don't. So let's see how we do this. How do we coin new words? There are several strategies that we can use. Let's start with the term Facebook. The word Facebook is a compound. That's a word made up of two words. Here, face and book. That gives you Facebook. And this word originally referred to a college publication distributed at the start of the academic year by university administrations with the intention of helping students get to know each other better. This is an older usage of this word. It has now been taken over by the word for the online social networking service. So here is where an existing compound has been coined to a new word with a different meaning. Here's another compound, earworm. This word is also relatively new. It refers to a catchy piece of music that continually repeats through a person's mind after it's no longer playing. The word earworm is a calque from the German Ohrwurm. But what's a calque? And what makes earworm a calque? Well, it's a literal translation of the German word Ohrwurm, which itself is a compound based on Ohr, which means ear, and Wurm, which means worm. It's like the song that doesn't leave your head is compared to a worm that crawled into your ear. We could have equally borrowed the German word itself and referred to this as Ohrwurm, which is what we did with Schadenfreude. That's also a German compound. It is a useful word because it describes a concept that we are all familiar with. It's the feeling of joy or pleasure when one sees another fail or suffer misfortune. If English did what it did with earworm, it wouldn't be Schadenfreude, but instead Harmjoy. But instead of a lone translation, English borrowed the German word wholesale. And the same with Zeitgeist, which would be time spirit or spirit of the time. But it hasn't been translated, just the pronunciation has been adjusted. When I say it in German, I say Zeitgeist. But when I say it in English, it is Zeitgeist. You can figure out the difference between the two pronunciations and practice your IPA at the same time. The same happened to rucksack. It's been borrowed wholesale. But there's also backpack, which is quite a literal translation. Though this doesn't mean that it had to enter the language in that way. That is, it could be a calque, but it may have started independent of the German rucksack. It is, after all, a pack that you carry on your back. But English didn't only borrow from German. There are many borrowings, like, for example, this one from Italian. Right, it's a latte. That it's still somehow marked as a borrowing because it doesn't undergo some of the regular phonological rules of North American English. So, for example, we don't flap the T here. We don't say, "Could I have a latte, please?" But not all words are just borrowed from another language. We can also create new words without looking elsewhere. For example, by cutting a piece of a word, like brother can be clipped to bro. That's coining a new word too. And it's quite an active little word. It can serve as the basis for creating other new words. The Oxford Dictionary website even has a blog on the rise of the Portman bro. Check it out if you want to find out what these new coinages mean. Now, some new words are formed by clipping and blending. For example, the word moob, meaning man boob, is made up of man and boob. But we got rid of the an in man and the b in boob, leaving us with moob. A special way of clipping is found in acronyms. These are words that are created on the basis of the first letter of complex words or phrases like LOL. Yes, you can use it as a word, like you can say, he LOL'd me, or is it, he LOL'd me. Another thing we sometimes do is this, though this is more of an accident that happens when children misanalyze a word, like, for example, verse. So, in the Red Sox versus the Yankees, you could misunderstand versus as being a verb. Just like in watches, we can take away the s to find the verb, we could analyze verses as being verse, a verb with the same es ending. Another thing we often do is take an existing word like Congress, a noun, and convert it to a verb. So on October 1st, 2013, the word of the day on urbandictionary.com was congressing, which is defined as wasting time and energy, being generally unproductive even though you have a lot of very important stuff to do. You can guess where that conversion is coming from. Another way to create new words is to use a name as a word or as part of a word, like for example in Obama care. So that's a pretty recent eponym, meaning a word based on a name. Here's another one, Manichaean, which now refers to any strongly dualistic vision, but it's actually based on the name Mani, a Persian prophet who started a strongly dualistic religion. You can find out more about that word on Dexterous Tongue. So now we have identified a number of different strategies to add new words. They're all ways of coining. Some are based on existing words, some are borrowed, some are clipped, blended, backformed, converted, etc. It doesn't matter whether these words become official or not. Once we create a new word, we can use it like any other word. We can be creative with them, make plural, use them as words, build whole new words based on them. So next time somebody tells you, but that's not a word, you can just tell them, now it is, because it is. Though this may not work when you play Scrabble. The words that you use in Scrabble should be in the dictionary. But all that means is that they're official. So, when does a word become official? When does it get adopted into a dictionary? Nowadays, it's simply if it is attested a certain number of times. If it's used, then it will get added into the dictionary. But of course, to be used, words have to be good in some sense. So, what makes a word a good word? According to Susie Dent, very roughly speaking, there are 5 primary contributors to the survival of a new word: usefulness, user-friendliness, exposure, the durability of the subject it describes, and its potential associations or extensions. If a new word fulfills these robust criteria, it stands a very good chance of inclusion in the modern lexicon. Here's your challenge. Find some new words, for example by going to the Urban Dictionary, and think about what kind of word is it? How was it made? Do you think it's a good word based on the criteria that you've just seen? Do you think it's going to last? Is it as useful as Schadenfreude, latte, bro, or LOL? You decide.